What's happening, everybody? It's the Miami Football Fanatic here again. Happy to have you guys back here for some more Finns content. And today, I want to talk about the Dolphins' quarterback situation moving forward, who I think our starter is going to be for the 2019 season, what kind of guys are out there in the free agent market, who we can possibly trade for, and a couple guys who I think could definitely be franchise quarterbacks for us moving forward in this year's draft. But obviously, the 2020 draft is going to be stacked with talent, with Tua, Jake Fromm, and Justin Herbert. Maybe some others might pop up next year. But yeah, there's a number of ways we can go here, and yeah, just going to give my opinion on who I think is going to be who's going to be our bridge quarterback as we move forward with our rebuild. We're definitely going to need a guy that can keep the franchise afloat, a guy that can get this offense going somewhat. We don't want to float down to the worst offense in the league. So let's get started with the free agent market. So we'll be starting the list here with Nick Foles, the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback for the last couple of seasons. He's been the spot starter from them, but he's been an absolute hero for them in the postseason. Winning a Super Bowl last year, he was the 2018 Super Bowl MVP, and also played well towards the end of the season this year, getting the Eagles into the playoffs and also getting a playoff win against Chicago. The Eagles have got a $20 million option on Foles, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to pick that up. They're going to let him hit the open market. Possibly can go to the Jaguars or the Redskins, someone like that, but I really don't want him for the Dolphins. I really don't think he's a real franchise quarterback, a guy that can really take us to the promised land. Even though he did do that for the Eagles last season, I really don't think he's the right guy for the Dolphins, and we definitely should not be bidding for his services during this free agent period. The next candidate from the free agency pool is Teddy Bridgewater, Saints quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, he's a talented guy. I really wanted to see the team pick him up last free agency period, but obviously the Jets way outbidded us. But it was an incentive-laden deal, but obviously the Dolphins didn't want to put that much money forward for a second quarterback. I mean, he would have been awesome competition for Tannehill in training camp, but obviously the absolutely stupid and ignorant training staff just, wanted to stick with Tannehill, didn't want to give him any real competition at all, which he never had his whole 7-year career or 6 years, whatever it was. But Teddy Bridgewater, I really like what he brings to the table as a quarterback. He's athletic. He's got great touch. He does a great job eluding pressure in the pocket. And I really think at times, he played really well for Minnesota as a rookie. But he did have a catastrophic injury in, I think was it 2015 or 2016? I can't remember now, but he had a crazy knee injury, and a lot of people around the league and his doctor actually came out and said that he didn't think he'd fully heal from it. But Teddy Bridgewater, I watched tape of his last game, Week 17, against the Panthers at the end of this season when he was playing with the Saints, and he was very up and down. He's very uneven, but you can't blame that on the guy. He wasn't getting much practice with the ones. Drew Brees obviously was getting all the snaps with the ones during the season, so Teddy didn't get the time to develop chemistry with the receivers. But I think he was like 14 of 23 that game for like 180 yards or something like that. But he didn't look spectacular, but that's what you could expect from a guy that didn't have the right time to get prepared with the guys. But I really think he'd be a great quarterback to bring in, maybe a guy that could even develop into the starter. At this point, I really don't think he could be our franchise guy, the guy that can get us to be a perennial playoff contender and hopefully a Super Bowl contender. But Teddy Bridgewater, I'd love to bring him in. He'd be better than any of the quarterbacks that we'd have on the roster besides Tannehill and Osweiler. They'll be gone, but he's a much better QB than Luke Falk and Rudock. I can't remember the other guy we just signed last week, but Teddy Bridgewater would be a nice QB to have on the team to develop with our talent. But he's going to get other offers elsewhere. He's going to get a nice deal somewhere else who knows where? Possibly the Redskins. But Teddy Bridgewater is another option. Tyrod Taylor is another guy we could possibly bring in on a 1-year deal, maybe 2-year deal. Tyrod Taylor, I mean, he isn't a spectacular QB. He didn't really play. I mean, he was kind of solid for Cleveland to start the season, but we saw when Baker Mayfield came in that, their offense just took off. He was hitting guys in stride and was doing a good job. But Tyrod Taylor, he's got a nice arm. He's a very incredibly athletic quarterback. He does a great job escaping pressure and getting yards with runs. Something we haven't had for a long time from a quarterback. Even though Ryan Tannehill was supposedly athletic, we never saw him scramble for 10, 15, 20 yards. Never. It was always on design runs. But Tyrod Taylor, if he wanted to come in on a reasonable deal, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Another guy who's going to be floating out there on the market is Joe Flacco, who I'm sure the Ravens are going to trade with them moving forward with Lamar Jackson under center, with Lamar Jackson, leading them to the playoffs this past season. I'm not sure how sustainable Lamar Jackson's style of play is, or how well he's going to develop as a passer. But one thing is for sure, Joe Flacco is not going to be with the Baltimore Ravens in 2019. So he was definitely, before we came out with the news that we're going to rebuild, Joe Flacco definitely would have been a viable option. But at this point, he really doesn't make any sense. He's on the cap for big cash the next 2 years. He's making like 24, 25 million the next couple of years, and just wouldn't make any sense. He'd be better for a team that's on the cusp of contending, a team that wants to slightly raise the level of play from their QB. But Joe Flacco definitely does not make sense for us with the team going forward with a rebuild. Ryan Fitzpatrick is another veteran option floating out there. He was absolutely incredible for the Buccaneers to start the season. With everybody in the media and fans, raving about Fitzmagic, and he had I think he had 3 games in a row of 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, something crazy like that. But then he came back down to earth and showed us the same Ryan Fitzpatrick we've come to know the past, decade or so to 8 years. But he's a turnover prone quarterback that is just really limited physically. He's a smart guy, definitely, being from Harvard. And I don't know if he was a Harvard grad or not, but, he's a smart guy. But he's a guy that can only start in spots. He always, once he gets to that 4th or 5th game, he definitely starts to show his warts and throws picks like it's no one's business. But I don't know. Maybe he'd be a decent veteran option, but I don't know. I'd rather not have him. But that's just another name I wanted to throw out there. Another guy who could possibly, be our starting guy with us moving to a rebuild. Okay, so that's it for the major free agent guys. Solid guys that I think that could, be solid quarterbacks for us. But moving on to QBs that I think will definitely be with the team, that are currently under contract. Luke Falk, I really think that we should be moving forward with him as a starter, unless we get a guy like a Dwayne Haskins or a Kyler Murray, guys that I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes. But Luke Falk, I really think he's got promise as a QB. As I said in my offensive review of the team, he's a smart, cerebral quarterback, and he's incredibly accurate. So I'd love to see how he could develop in the league and how he could look for the team for the next few years. Another guy who has unfortunately been floating around, and a guy who could possibly be back, but I definitely don't think he'll be back, with him being handpicked by Gase, who is now with the Jets, is Brock Osweiler. If I had to watch another snap under center from that guy, I don't know what I'd do. I'd probably just I'd just change teams or just quit watching the NFL that year. Brock Osweiler, I just hate the dude. I can't stand him. He's an even worse quarterback than Tannehill. Brock Osweiler is just straight trash. A 6'8" quarterback who he's just crap. He's got no arm talent, no arm strength. He's just absolutely terrible. And it would just break my heart if he was back with the team. So that's it for the possible veterans the team could sign or possibly trade for. But I'm sure it's probably none of those guys are going to be under center for us moving forward. But just some names that I want to throw out there. Alrighty, so on to this year's draft. Just a couple guys that I think can maybe be franchise players for us. One guy who I definitely think can be a franchise QB for us. But let's get started with the list. If the Dolphins wanted to kickstart the rebuild and get our franchise guy in the building this year, it would definitely be Dwayne Haskins. I absolutely love this guy. He's got an incredible arm. His release is just insane. It's almost robotic-like. And he's just got incredible accuracy on all three levels of the field. He's a decent athlete. He gets away from pressure. He can, get caught from the blind side from time to time. But Dwayne Haskins would just be an incredible QB for this offense and for this team moving forward. His arm is just insane. I haven't looked into much, what his character's like. I haven't heard anything, disparaging about him. But if there are any red flags with Haskins, I'm sure they'll be popping up during the pre-draft process in the months leading up to the draft. But Haskins, he definitely has all the makings of a franchise QB, and I really think our passing game and our offense would just absolutely flourish with Haskins under center. He's a special talent at quarterback, and his arm is just insane. The only guys I could compare his arm to is like Jimmy G and Aaron Rodgers. That's what kind of a special arm talent we're dealing with here, and a guy who's just got incredible command of the offense. He almost was the Heisman Trophy winner for Ohio State this year, but Kyler Murray had an insane season, who we're going to be talking about in a few moments. But Haskins, I would love him for the Dolphins. If we wanted to pick Haskins this year and bypass, potentially getting Jake Fromm or Tua or Herbert next year, I'd be absolutely 100% on board with it. Haskins is just a talent who I'd love to see with the Dolphins for the next decade or so. Okay, so on to Kyler Murray. So out of Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins, I'd obviously rather have Dwayne Haskins with, obviously he's got a greater commitment to football, but Kyler Murray, there kind of is that question out there that, if he's committed to football, he has entered the draft, but, there's always going to be those undertones and, just those questions of whether or not he's just going to, skip straight over to baseball. But if the Dolphins pick him up in the first round, I'd be happy with it. The guy is just he's a crazy QB, man. I've never seen an athlete like him at QB. I reckon he's definitely going to run. If he does run at the Combine or at his pro day, he's going to run in the 4.3s, low 4.3s, easy. He was just outrunning everyone this year in college, especially against Alabama too. He was faster than most of the guys on Alabama's defense. That shows what kind of athlete it is. But he's got the arm to match too. He's got the surprising arm strength that you see from Russell Wilson. Both guys have got a baseball background. The guy just got great accuracy and timing and ability with his arm. It's just the angles he can find, as a baseball player playing QB is just insane. And if the Dolphins wanted to pick him up and make him the centerpiece of the offense, I'd be happy with it. He's a truly dynamic player and a guy who would just electrify this offense and the city of Miami. Obviously the main concern with Kyler Murray is his height. We've never seen a guy his size. I really think that he's going to measure in at maybe 5'9" or 5'8". We've never seen a guy his height excel in the league, but if there's a guy to do it, it's Kyler Murray. He's an insane athlete with the arm to match, and just a guy who's just a all-around solid dude. He's definitely got the personality to excel in the league. Never gets too high, never gets too low. It definitely seems like he's got the character to make it work in the league, but it remains to be seen a guy his size, excelling. Nobody knew that Russell Wilson could be the kind of maybe future Hall of Fame quarterback that he is at the moment. He's 5'10". He had major concerns with his height, but just being a supreme athlete and having that baseball background just allows these guys to excel as QBs. And Kyler Murray could potentially be one of those guys too. He's just there's a reason why he won the Heisman and led Oklahoma to that solid record. And we'll see what happens moving forward with Kyler Murray. Another guy who could potentially be at the team is Daniel Jones from Duke. This is a guy who I'm not as high on, obviously, as Haskins and Murray, but Daniel Jones, he's a talented QB, he's an alright athlete, but from what I've seen, he looks like a repeat of Ryan Tannehill. He looks like Tannehill 2.0. he may be a bit taller and a bit better of an athlete and a bit better at eluding pressure, but Daniel Jones, I really would not want to see the Dolphins take him in the first round. Even if we were to trade back and take Daniel Jones and get some more picks, I really don't want to see him under center with the team, and it'd just be truly disappointing if the guys in the front office, Chris Greer and all those guys, went forward with Daniel Jones as our hopeful franchise QB. Drew Lock is the next guy on the list who I definitely should have had above Daniel Jones, but Drew Lock is a guy who I think is definitely going to creep into the top 15, maybe even top 10 of the draft, with guys like Patrick Mahomes having great success in the league, guys that have just got absolutely rocket arms, and Drew Lock, he's got an incredible arm, he's got incredible arm strength, but he's got the accuracy to match. I've watched a number of his games, and he's definitely got great touch in the intermediate to deep routes. And the only thing is, his accuracy at times can waver, but Drew Lock, he can throw like 50-yard touchdowns on a dime, and just with incredible velocity, similar to what we saw from Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming. But Drew Lock, we'll see how he progresses. We'll see how he performs. I think he's going to be at the Senior Bowl. He's going to be at the Senior Bowl, Combine, Pro Day. We'll see how he progresses in this pre-draft process. But the more I watch him, the more I'm starting to, warm up to him as a prospect. But he definitely isn't a guy who I'd want to take in the first round and wager our future on. Dwayne Haskins definitely is that guy. Another guy who I think is definitely a second or third round option is Will Grier. Maybe if the Dolphins brass fell in love with him during this draft process, we could possibly take him in the second or third round. He looks incredibly similar to Baker Mayfield. Granted, he hasn't got the same arm strength that Baker possesses, but he does a great job getting away from pressure, and he's got great accuracy. As we saw from him at West Virginia, he put up incredible numbers. I think he won Offensive Player of the Year in his division in college football. But Will Grier, he reminds me a lot of Baker Mayfield. Obviously, isn't the same kind of talent, but he's a guy that can definitely get it done. He does exactly what you want from a quarterback. He does a tremendous job getting away from pressure, and he's got great accuracy on the run. His off-platform throws are incredibly accurate. There are questions about his arm strength, but he definitely is a solid QB prospect coming out of the draft this year, and is a guy that if the Dolphins fall in love with, I'd be happy with taking him in the third round, possibly the second round. Brett Ripien is my last QB on this list. He's a guy who I really love his arm. He's got a great quick release, not quite like Haskins, but he's got a kind of similar release to Haskins. They got very, like short, quick release, very choppy releases. They even got big winding, throwing motions. They get the ball out quick, and they got great accuracy. But Brett Ripien, I haven't had a chance to see his tape for the East-West Shrine game, but he's definitely a QB that I love, and I would definitely be interested for the Dolphins to take him in the third or fourth round. But he'd definitely be a nice development piece, similar to Will Grier. Guys who would be good for the QB room, and just having some talented young QBs that can maybe trade for picks in the future is definitely something of fortune that we should have on the team. Okay, so that's it for my full list for possible starting QBs for the Dolphins next year, or possible development projects like Will Grier, Drew Lock, and Brett Ripien. But there's a number of guys there who could definitely be bridge quarterbacks for us. But if we were to take a guy this year, I definitely want Dwayne Haskins. I just love everything about him as a QB. But next year, the Dolphins, if the report is true and we are going to take a quarterback in 2020, I definitely would be happy with Jake Fromm, Tua, or Justin Herbert. They are all tremendous talents as QBs, and guys that definitely could help lead the franchise moving forward. But yeah, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Give me all the feedback you want. If you agreed with my assessments on these guys, or if you disagree, make sure to comment your thoughts in the comment section. Alrighty guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, fins up. Cheers folks.